For most of us, hard work is a toll. It is a mandatory, often painful price we pay to acquire an external reward, whether that is a paycheck, a promotion, or social status. Because we structure our goals this way, the brain assigns all the value to the outcome. By default, the actual process of working is categorized as a negative state. It registers as pure friction, an obstacle that needs to be minimized. The immediate symptom of this model is procrastination. When the brain views the work itself as friction, initiating a task requires massive, daily reserves of willpower just to get moving. But willpower is a highly finite cognitive resource. If you drain your reserves every single morning just to force yourself to start working, the system eventually breaks down. This constant daily depletion leads directly to chronic exhaustion and burnout. The standard hustle approach demands that we fight our own neurology. It treats the journey as a barrier to survive, which misaligns the brain's reward system and makes sustained effort biologically impossible to maintain. Consider the impact on motivation if the friction of the work itself replaced the outcome as the primary reward. In Japanese culture, there is a distinct psychological framework that executes exactly this reversal. It is known as Doryoku. Doryoku translates to effort, but in practice, it shifts how the brain assigns value to exertion. This mindset takes grueling, repetitive tasks and turns them into deeply engaging experiences. Doryoku functions by converting the mental resistance of a task into a chemically addictive state. To understand how this works, we have to separate Doryoku from karoshi, the toxic culture of working oneself to death for a corporation. Doryoku is highly personal. It is the quiet dedication to continuous, incremental self-betterment. Under this framework, the process of doing the work is treated as a craft entirely independent of the final product. Look at this timeline of the standard hustle mindset. You endure a long wait through the friction, delaying dopamine entirely until the project is completed. Doryoku redistributes that reward. The payoff moves away from the finish line into each specific act of exertion. Because the focus is on the craft itself, every hour of focused work becomes an immediate, self-contained victory for the individual. By valuing the process over the destination, the agonizing psychological wait for a delayed payoff is eliminated. The present moment becomes intrinsically valuable. This creates a measurable biological shift. You transition from extrinsic motivation, working for the outcome, to intrinsic motivation, where the act itself holds the value. Once intrinsic motivation is established, the brain stops waiting for the finish line. It begins releasing dopamine simply in response to the act of trying. This flowchart illustrates the resulting neurological loop. It begins in the first stage. Focused effort triggers an immediate release of dopamine. Here is the crucial next step. Dopamine acts as a chemical lubricant. Its presence physically reduces the perceived difficulty of the task at hand, which points right back to initiating more focused effort. Doing the work makes it easier to continue doing the work. The cycle accelerates, becoming entirely self-sustaining. This cycle creates a craving for the effort itself. Because the brain associates the act of trying with an immediate neurochemical reward, it begins to seek out the work session to repeat the loop, replicating the same neural pathways involved in behavioral addiction. You weaponize your own brain chemistry. The friction that usually stops you becomes the exact fuel that keeps you going. Applying this logic to your own life reveals that daily exhaustion is rarely caused by the actual volume of work you do. That exhaustion is generated by how you frame the work. When you constantly stare at a distant finish line, the mental tax compounds, making every single current step feel unbearably heavy. The alternative is finding respect and aesthetic beauty in the exertion itself. Focusing on the rhythm of the work instantly lightens the psychological load. Framed through Doryoku, effort transforms into a sustainable state of flow. Mastery requires shifting your perspective until you crave the friction of the work itself.